I'm in an awkward position because I'm the naysayer. And that's my obligation as the Constitution defines it, as our system defines it. I tried to be a politician. I had been to Vietnam. I'd written about it. Some people in the 7th, what was then the 7th Congressional District up in California, wanted me to run against an incumbent Democrat, Jeffrey Cohalan. He was a good progressive guy, come out of actually the labor movement, but he wouldn't come out against the war. And he wouldn't break with Lyndon Johnson. And I had seen something of that war. I've been in Vietnam twice as a journalist. I was editor of Ramparts Magazine and so forth. And a number of people asked me to run against him, and they promised me that he would change his position, come out against the war, and then I could go back to being a full-time editor of Ramparts. One of those people who asked me to run was Henry Waxman. And Henry Waxman was head of the Young Democrats. And so we go back a long way. And I know we had some controversy about this meeting. There were people who wrote me emails saying, you know, Henry Waxman is a warmonger because he supports Israel in the way he does, and I should throw him under the bus, and I shouldn't appear on a platform with him. And I thought to myself, well, why doesn't Henry refuse to appear on a platform with me? I mean, I've been more radical than he has, and I'm more controversial, and I'm sure there's a whole bunch of things that I've said and stood for that he doesn't agree with, including Israel, which I will get to in a minute. And so my feeling is that the controversy we've had is not, first of all, just unique to us. The Gallup poll says that 48% of Democrats say that Israel should not have gone into Gaza, and only 31% support it. The Pew poll is pretty strong. There's a division over this policy now that has not occurred before. Gaza is shocking to people, shocking. And anybody who thinks you're doing Israel a favor by passing a resolution in Congress where every senator and only 4 members of the House, unfortunately, was not our representative, but only 4 members of the House resist giving Israel a total blank check. You don't do anyone a favor, any government, any movement, or any people, when you give them a blank check. I didn't want to give Lyndon Johnson a blank check. In fact, our slogan in those days was part of the way with LBJ. That was the SDS slogan. We wore buttons. Why? Because Lyndon Johnson cared about poverty, had a war on poverty. He'd been very good on civil rights. He was one of the last of the great Southern civil rights supporters in the white community. And it was with great reluctance that we took on LBJ. And we took on LBJ because LBJ continued a policy, expanded a policy that was just horrible. And 3.5 million Indo-Chinese people died, 59,000 Americans in a war that Robert McNamara, who was one of the architects of that war, said in the movie Fog of War he could not justify, and that if we were not such a strong nation, he could be considered a war criminal. And that was a war, basically, of the work of a Democratic president. So I am opposed to giving anyone a blank check. And I'm certainly opposed to giving a blank check to people who think that you can kill children and innocent civilians. And I want to say something about that. I happened to go to Gaza at the time of the Six-Day War. And I'm not naive about the realities of that neighborhood, as some people talk about. And I would remind people, however, that it was not the Palestinians in Gaza who attacked Israel. Gaza was occupied by Egypt. And if you went through Gaza, you saw the abysmal conditions. Nor was Israel attacked by the people in the West Bank. That was occupied by Jordan. And then a little portion was occupied by Syria. And somehow we have demonized the Palestinians. The people in Gaza were people who were living in Israel, that area. They had their own nationalist ambitions. They were promised a land, the famous two-state solution, which we talk about. And this idea that somehow you have a moral basis for fixing on the Palestinians all of the problems of anti-Semitism, the persecution of Jews, the instability of the Middle East, and the attacks on Israel is horrible. It is just wrong. And I think that progressives have got to take seriously their obligation to help the Israelis come to their senses. And I have followed this issue a long time. I consider myself, dare I say it, I'll probably lose all my friends, if being a Zionist means you believe the state of Israel should be allowed to exist and within the boundaries of before the Six-Day War and should be secure and accepted and have normal relations, then I'm a Zionist. Okay? I don't doubt that, you know? I think that's a moral position. But if you tell me that I'm a self-hating Jew because I don't want to bomb children and I don't want to bomb innocent civilians who are being kept in an outdoor prison camp, which is what Gaza is, no. You believe in apartheid, you believe in racism, and I'm not with you. Period. Now, I'm not going to go on, but we're allowed to have our disagreements. And I took Henry's challenge, let's debate. And my argument is not trying to silence people who have a different position at all. The publisher of Truthdig, her sister lives in an area in Israel which is rocketed. Okay? We don't have a Palestinian writer. Most of the people on Truthdig who write critically about Israel happen to be Jewish. And they're not self-hating Jews. They're very proud Jews, and they think that there has to be a moral component to that. You know, I must say, by the way, you know, as a kid, until now, when I go to a Seder, I wonder, why did we welcome God drowning their firstborn? Did anybody ever ask that question? We're allowed to ask those questions. We're not religious fanatics. We're allowed to challenge commandments of that sort. And so I would argue that it's wonderful that a group, I've spoken to progressive Democrats many times. I know there are different points of view. I don't want to see anybody tossed out or anybody denied. And I want to respect people for the great work they've done, but I want open debate. And when the United States Congress tells me we can't debate the policy of another government, when I think we have the right to debate the policy of our own government. That's, after all, how we got it. If I can condemn the United States for what it's done, why can't I condemn Israel? It has a strong military, has an enormously powerful economy. They're not so vulnerable. I think they have to be protected, but we have to have free, open discussion about this and not be intimidated. Now, I want to take a couple other shots at Democrats as long as I'm here.